It is perilous waters. You know, we have relative peace in the Middle East because of the Trump policies with regard to Iran. Iran is weaker, poorer, and less influential than they've been in 2 decades, and that's because we withdrew from the JCPOA and we implemented sanctions. And the Biden administration, much as they've done with domestic policy, trying to just prove that Trump was wrong when, in fact, the policies very clearly show that the Trump administration was right, would jeopardize our national security. We shouldn't be back in that Iranian nuclear deal, and the Biden administration should walk away.
And that was former Director of National Intelligence John Ratcliffe on this program back in March, warning the Biden administration that negotiating with Iran could be deadly, jeopardize peace in the Middle East. Since then, tensions in the region have only intensified. Israel ramping up airstrikes in Gaza in response to Hamas firing on Jerusalem and Tel Aviv on Monday. Joining me right now is the former Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, who helped broker the deals between Israel and 4 Arab countries under the Trump administration, known as the Abraham Accords. Secretary, thanks very much for all of your work. Good morning to you. It is good to see you this morning.
Good morning, Maria. It's great to be with you this morning.
So before we dive into the crisis in the Middle East, you heard John Ratcliffe predicting what's happening. I want to get your thoughts on what you just heard from Devin Nunes about the origins of COVID-19. When you were at the State Department, what did you know about the origins of the coronavirus, sir?
Maria, we worked to get every bit of evidence that we could. We tried to deliver this. The CDC tried to work with the Chinese. They covered it up terribly. But every piece of evidence that we saw throughout the entire time I was there suggested that this originated in that laboratory at the Wuhan Institute of Virology. I haven't seen a shred of evidence that suggests anything to the contrary. That evidence continues to accumulate in spite of the fact that the Chinese Communist Party will not permit anyone to get any access to the laboratory, to the original materials, to the doctors that were working there. The list of the cover-up efforts is staggering. And the combination of the circumstantial evidence that we have combined with the intense effort to deny us information about that lab suggests to me strongly that this was where it originated. And Maria, as I think Devin said, the risk that something like this happens again from that laboratory or another Chinese laboratory is very real. They are operating and conducting activities that are inconsistent with their capacity to secure those facilities. And the risk of bioweapons and bioterror emanating from this region is very real.
Unbelievable. And I know that you worked with Devin Nunes all the way when you were a congressman from Kansas, before you were the CIA director, before you were the Secretary of State. All right, real quick, one other question on this, then I want to move on. We've got a lot to talk to you about. We discussed a story on this program last weekend about a story broken by an Australian journalist, Shari Marxian. She said that the U.S. State Department obtained documents in May of 2020 revealing that Chinese military scientists discussed the weaponization of SARS coronavirus 5 years before the pandemic showed up. What can you tell us?
Well, I can't say much about those particular documents, but you'll recall back in January of 2021, we released a set of now declassified information pieces that talked about the fact that we believe there were doctors that came down with the symptoms from the virus back in 2019. Deep knowledge that the Chinese Communist Party had about human-human transition long before they admitted it to the WHO or to the world. There is increasing evidence that the Chinese Communist Party acted at least with reckless negligence and perhaps even worse.
I mean, should President Trump and the State Department been notified if they were lifting the pause on this gain of research funding in December of 17?
Absolutely. I don't know when that happened. I don't know whose decision it was. I hope Congressman Nunes and the members of Congress who are working on this diligently to protect and secure Americans from this kind of virus happening again. I hope we can get to the bottom of it. I'm confident that when we learn what happened here, we will find that there were mistakes on our side as well. I regret that.
Okay, let me move on to the Middle East because you brokered these incredible deals. You actually presented peace in the Middle East to the Biden administration. Now we're seeing rockets firing at Israel every day. President Trump made the Middle East safer by isolating Iran. Your thoughts on the policies that the Biden administration are taking to try to get the U.S. back into the Iran deal? Are the Abraham Accords now in jeopardy?
I think the Abraham Accords will survive because it was good for the people of the United Arab Emirates, of Bahrain, and of Israel. I think those leaders will ensure that these accords survive. But every single step that the Biden administration has taken to date puts them at greater risk and puts those friends and allies and partners of ours in the Middle East at greater risk. There is, Maria, a direct line. There is a direct line between appeasement and war. We worked for 4 years to create peace and stability in the Middle East, and we made clear to the Palestinian Authority we're not going to underwrite you. We're not going to send American taxpayer money to the Palestinians while you're still committed to wiping Israel off the face of the earth. This administration came in and immediately began underwriting the Palestinians again. They handed billions of dollars over to the Iranians in terms of absence of enforcement of sanctions. The Iranians are underwriting the very terrorists who are firing rockets into Jerusalem and Tel Aviv today. This is crazy. This is bad for our friend and partner Israel. It's bad for the broader Middle East, and it puts American lives at risk as well. These sets of policies are completely 180 degrees out of the things that we now know. Maria, I'll give you one more example. You remember they said that exactly this kind of thing would happen if we moved the U.S. embassy to Jerusalem. They said there'll be war, there'll be firing of rockets, and all things. Well, we moved to the embassy. None of that happened. When this administration refused to allow the Israelis to do the things that they need to do to defend themselves, that's when you get conflict like you see today between Israel and the Palestinians.
Yeah, we're going to show a graphic of the statement by President Trump about all of this. He said, when I was in office, we were known as the peace presidency because Israel's adversaries knew that the United States stood strongly with Israel and there would be swift retribution if Israel was attacked. Under Biden, the world is getting more violent and more unstable because Biden's weakness and lack of support for Israel is leading to new attacks on our allies. Look, you just said it 1 month after the administration. These attacks are happening 1 month after the administration decided to send money, economic aid to the Palestinian Authority, including areas controlled by militant groups. Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio warned the Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, against doing this. And just a few weeks ago, you told a group that Al-Qaeda is now based in Iran. So tell me about that. Iran is supplying arms to Hamas, the proxies, to fight against Israel as well.
Maria, it's crazy. You have U.S. diplomats sitting with the Islamic Republic of Iran's leadership in Vienna trying to decide exactly how many billions of dollars to give to that regime. What's that regime doing today that impacts people all across America? It is hosting Al-Qaeda, the folks who took down the tower in New York now almost 20 years ago. The senior operational leadership is sitting in Tehran, and Americans are sitting in Vienna with the leaders in Tehran. That Iranian regime is underwriting the Hamas terrorists, the Palestinian Islamic Jihad terrorists, who are flying rockets on Israelis into Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, where many Americans reside, putting American lives at risk. The fact that this administration is so wedded to this JCPO, so it's almost an article of faith for them. And it puts American lives at risk. It doesn't secure American freedom, and it's bad for global stability and certainly for our friends and allies in the Middle East.
Secretary, real quick, your reaction to this open letter from 120 plus retired generals and admirals signed an open letter this week questioning the legitimacy of the 2020 presidential election, also Biden's fitness to lead as we watch open borders where narcotics are coming in, killing our people, 90,000 overdoses in the last year, largely due to fentanyl coming into this country. Tell me about that letter, though, from the retired generals. What did you make of that?
Well, I know this. We've got to figure out how to host secure elections that the American people have confidence in. That has to happen, Maria. Our republic depends on this. The Democrats' solution to this is something called H.R. 1. They want to make sure that no American ever has to show an ID to vote. That is crazy. They want to make sure that your money, my money, taxpayer money, goes to fund candidates from the national treasury. I mean, this is not how you secure these elections. The way you do it is the way you see state legislatures all across the country. They're working to build out secure systems. That's the right approach.
Okay. All right. Secretary, it's great to see you this morning. We have many more questions for you on the border.
Yes, ma'am.
And on the Colonial Pipeline. We'll do it on another day.